Today is the seventh day of the May 1986 retreat. We've talked quite a bit in the talks and in meetings about our conditioned way of doing practically anything that we're doing for the sake of something else. Working in order to earn a livelihood or climb a social ladder, become somebody, or sitting in order to get a quiet mind, come to enlightenment, become a better person. And we have questioned and maybe looked at whether in doing anything for the sake of something else one can be completely with what one is doing, with what is there. I think if one does look carefully, one sees it's impossible to be completely with this instant. If in my mind this instant only exists for the sake of a future instant or a future goal, then the mind is divided. Part of it preoccupied with a goal, part of it preoccupied with success and the fear of failure, and all the emotions that are connected with that. And maybe some part actually concerned with what is happening, what one is doing, but not the whole mind given to that. Whole body, mind. They're not separate. Or one could put it this way: if there is complete withness, one is completely there with what is, not because it's pleasant or gratifying or fulfilling, but because it's there. Something needs to be done or something needs to be seen and looked at. When there is this completely giving attention to it. I know the words are dualistic. Let's not go into this right now. Just completely being with what is there, pleasant or unpleasant, painful or joyful. Then there is no room for thinking of what this may lead to. Then there is no future because there is no thought about a goal, an attainment. And the question is, can there be this moment of being totally there, without any self-reference, because that is, again, a division of the mind. I'm doing this in order to become or be attentive. That's a thought. The thought of me there and the thought of being attentive, and that's not attention. The thought may come up, but can that be seen, heard, listened to, and finished, seeing it as a partition, as a division, as a sap of energy or a waste of it. Not wasting any emotions over the fact that the self-image has arisen. So what? It arises in human beings. Can it be seen and finished at that instant? So that there's wholeness in what one is doing, looking at, perceiving, saying. It's easier said than done. But I think to ask this question, whether it's possible, is utterly significant. And not to answer it, but to have it there, alive with every moment. Is it possible to just be there? And not repeat the question, of course. Then one is with a question and doesn't see what's going on. And it becomes a mantra, as we talked about in one talk, used to banish unpleasant or distracting thoughts or feelings. Wondering, what is this moment? And then looking, listening. And not knowing it. If we know what this moment is, there's no need to look. And then there's no spontaneous action, because we know it all. From the first meeting in this retreat, some people have talked about their fear of dying, fear of death. And we will spend some time on this morning. Judging from the monuments and scriptures and all various mementos human beings have left throughout written and unwritten history, there has been concern in the human mind about death, maybe ever since human beings have appeared on this earth. Fear of death and trying to prepare for death and for what may come, or is hoped to come, or is feared to come after death. Why is there this fear of dying in a human being? Maybe starting at a certain age, a little baby is not afraid of dying. Even though there are strong mechanisms in the little baby to survive. But there is very likely no thought yet of a personal identity, and connected with that, a thought of this identity coming to an end, a thought of what life will be. Little children are very much in the present, and only gradually learn to make abstractions and to draw on memories and to project memories into what is called the future. And with that comes the fear of dying, the fear of losing life or losing someone else. That may be part of the fear of death, having lost someone that one is particularly fond of, particularly attached to. And with the death of that person facing an incredible desolation, feeling of despair and loneliness, and hating this death which has taken the person away, leaving one abandoned, as it were. Resenting the cruelty of that. Death has been personified. I remember as a child looking through books, always being particularly interested in the pictures, seeing a picture of death as a skeleton with a scythe, mowing things down without any loving eyes. There are just two holes there in the head. There's something unapproachable to this figure in the picture. It didn't see you. You couldn't appeal to it, make friends with it. Although that attempt has been made too, a song comes to mind. It's a beautiful song. It's a dialogue between a maiden and death. Maiden cries out, go past me, you wild man, I'm still young. Go on and don't touch me." And then death replying, "Give me your hand, I'm not wild. You will rest gently in my arms." I love that song. It's comforting. And yet, thought, thinking, projection, imagination, fantasy. Do you see that? So, apart from having lost someone and having felt the pain of loss, or a bitterness that may arise out of it, bitterness often in a parent about losing a young child. Why him? Why me? Even if this hasn't happened to one, and if it doesn't happen to one, the fact that it happens to someone else often is very remote. One may send one's condolences, but it doesn't tear at one's innards the way it does when it happens to oneself. So apart from losing a loved one, why is there this fear of dying oneself, which is so universal? Everywhere and probably since time immemorial. Sometimes someone will say, if I would know what dying is, if I could only know it, then I may not be afraid of it. Which is, isn't it, the attempting to think it, to think it through, to make it knowledge, by thinking about it, by being able to imagine it fully, then hoping to lose fear of it. But the uniqueness or peculiarity of dying is that it is not knowable. One can see someone else dying, but how it really is to die, one cannot know. Unless dying takes place right here, in oneself. Dying or death refuses to be known. We can make pictures of it, have ideas about the process or what will happen to us after death, cling to beliefs or superstitions about it, to allay the fear. But can one inquire into this and see where such beliefs originate? One can say, well, somebody has experienced that, has come back from death, but that's somebody, that's not oneself. One takes somebody else's word for it, for out of fear of not knowing and wanting to bring this matter of dying into the known, to be free of the fear. And actually, if we look at the way we live from moment to moment, on the 7th day of a retreat, hasn't one at least had glimpses of this fear of not knowing what this is, what this moment is, what the next moment is? How to proceed, not knowing what to do. And the fear of that, the panic, as some people put it, when there's a moment of really not knowing. Actually, at that moment, there is no panic, because not knowing means no thought, no fantasy, no imagination, and therefore no fear. Fear cannot exist when thought is absent. Fear and thought are totally linked. One can dispute it, but it's not a matter of argument, it's a matter of looking. Thought meaning remembrance, memory, which can include physical memories. It seems as though the organism has deposited memories in the brain. Before one was thinking, the child has frightful experiences before language. So we include this kind of a memory, this as yet unverbalized fear as memory. So if there's a moment of not knowing, and then thinking tries to represent to itself what's going on, labeling this moment nothing or whatever, dying. Is this dying? And then fear. I don't want to die. Bringing all that one knows about what one is to bear on this moment that was a moment of not knowing. And of course this is the end of the moment of not knowing. Then there's knowing of what I am, what I want to be, how I want to continue, and the fear that this may be interfered with. We talked a bit yesterday about, not just yesterday, I think it is a thread that has woven through all 7 talks, trying to come in direct contact and direct understanding of what this feeling of selfhood is. This feeling of being me as a separate entity that I know about, that I can think about, that I can project about continuing, and that I can imagine dying. Which, as it was put right now, I think we can all agree is thinking as a process of thought. Knowing what I am, which includes the whole stack of photo albums about my past life. These are all memories, what I was at this age and what happened to me then and what occurred when I was at that age. And all of this is this composite of feeling of my past, and I'm that past, I'm the result of that past. Knowledge about what I'm now, meaning image, being a mother or an executive or an artist or a spiritual person, whatever that means. And ideas about what I want to become, how I want my life to continue, what I want to keep experiencing, what gave me such enormous feelings of pleasure and bliss in the past, imagining that I want that to continue, what I want to have in the future, children or more children, grandchildren, visualizing joys about that, and then the thought of this often very beloved and sometimes very hated story coming to an end. And the fear of that. As one person said, if I remember right, I won't hear music anymore if I'm dead. And there's a real sadness that comes up at the thought of not hearing music anymore. It's thought, isn't it? Imagination to the fullest. What I like now and what it will be like if I won't hear it anymore. And using the emotions that are aroused right now, sadness or bitterness or whatever, to combine with this idea of dying. Actually, One person said this, and I remember it is written in a book here. It's in, if I'm correct, in the Three Pillars, a contemporary Zen master being quoted as saying, "When you die, the whole universe dies." I remember right, he says this to several of the students who come to him, and no one questions it. When you die, the whole universe dies. Of course, it's said by a master, and he must know what he's saying. He must have a reason for it, even if it sounds questionable. But let us look at it right now. Maybe all of us have read that passage and been influenced by it in some way or another. What does it mean that when I die, the whole universe dies with me? Well, one person said, if I die, I won't see this flower anymore. Oh no! It isn't just what this person said. I think he said this flower won't be there anymore. It's true for this particular brain, an organism, what we call the universe, this buzzing, that brain won't perceive that. It's dead. It's finished. It doesn't perceive the bird, the flower, the stars at night. But it doesn't mean that therefore the flower doesn't continue to exist, or the buzzing bee, or the stars, or the moon, or the birds. It doesn't make sense. More human beings have died than are alive now, and yet the oceans and the land and the sky and the stars, the sun and the moon and the planets are there. I think that's very simple. For whatever reason the statement may have been made, does one take that at face value? We are so self-centered. We live in this self-center. This is our homestead, this tiny little compartment, this box, in which are created all of our hopes and fears and anxieties and movies. And then the attachment to these movies. We called them home box movies once. And being attached to the story of our life and the continuation of this story and the fear of its ending at some time. And then the creation of illusions, the invention of illusions, to allay that fear, and then the attachment to those illusions, the paradise or the whatever. It's as manifold as the flowers on the meadow, what has been invented about what will happen to human beings after death. All of that, the creation of this little box, cuts one off from the totality of life. Which does not end when one individual life comes to an end. Actually, that individual life ending is not the ending of life. Before we invented our most modern burial methods, although they're not so modern, the pharaohs are still available too, in their embalmed glamour. Now you can have boxes, I don't know for how many thousands of years the guarantee goes of not being disintegrated by water or earth. Into compartments, although the kind of shoddy workmanship we are getting into more and more may still make a body available to further life, disintegration, and little bugs eating and feeding on it. Just a picture comes to mind. I don't know if you've seen it in one of the documentary nature movies. It is a speed-up movie, fast motion. I think a rabbit has died, and all the little creatures feeding on this rabbit, and the movie is so fast that in but a moment they're just these completely white and clean bones. And bones the bones were there was no further disintegration, they last, and that's why we worship them. In the form of relics. We wouldn't laugh about this if we were involved in this worship, as maybe some of us have been. Circumambulating around places built for the worship of bones. Actually, I saw a movie once about elephants. Maybe you've seen it. An elephant had died, and there were, of course, the tusks are already clean, but there were some other bones, and several of the elephants kept carrying these bones and deposited them on one heap. You can never completely 100% trust the person who makes a movie like this, because he may be pulling your leg or trying to put more into the elephant. But it looked quite genuine. Actually, all of our memories and mementos that we cherish now attached to and thought circumambulating around them are also bones, dead bones. Does one see that? Or is one fascinated by the circumambulation around things past, not realizing at the moment the unreality of it all, the wastefulness of it all, and the division, the removal from the fullness of life right now, whether it may be happy or painful, sad, whatever. Difficult, problematical. So the question comes up, doesn't it, at this point? Does one have to live this way? Does one have to live in projections of the story of one's life and the attachment to it, and therefore the fear of dying, fear of losing? Or can one, at the moment that this arises, this projection, this fantasy of tomorrow or what I'm going to do, to see it and be done with it, people say, how do you do that? That's wanting to make it known again. How do I do it? Bring it into the field of technique and method so I know it. But it happens on its own. When something is seen clearly as being a fantasy, which is an escape from fear. And to touch that fear, to really touch it. Like one touches a friend. Gently, no resistance, no escape. Because it's there. It's not my fear, it's human fear of not continuing, which is thought, idea, fantasy. Do you see it? The thought of death comes up. Does one see that it is a thought, an idea? And can all emotions about it be seen and dropped? The thought of me arises, what I am, what I want to be. I don't mean if one is deciding what job to take, a change of jobs, or to decide on how one is going to earn one's livelihood. There one has to really look at what one wants to do. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this constant emergence in our moment-to-moment living from who I am, what I want to represent to others, how I want others to see me. Have you seen that in this retreat? Not just seen it, but seen it as an image, not as a reality of what I am. What I am, I don't know. What I know is memories of what happened to me. These are abstractions, because at no time of memories deposited were we that attentive that we knew all of us, the whole of us. Maybe that's not even perceivable. These memories, all little pieces and fragments, and that's what we think we are. It's memories. Incomplete memories. And so it is with what we think we're going to be, incomplete projections. And our preoccupation with that, and how it will affect others, how others will affect us, our preoccupation with that kills this live moment of now. So in seeing that, can there be dying to that? Dying to the image. I've said it so many times, but it has to happen. Can it happen? Yes, it can happen. When there's no attachment to image of what I am, was, will be, should be, can be, will continue to be, if that is seen as so much thought activity, and the energy is here now, aware, then where's the fear of death? Then there is dying from moment to moment. Every time the image comes up, the fantasy wants to take over, to see it. Most of the time we don't see it, so we live in it, so we're afraid, so we build illusions. Then we shake for these illusions. If we're not so infatuated with our experience, there's a difference between listening to these birds, listening to the sounds outside. It's more than the birds. Listening to it and being what I'll call right now, being infatuated with this marvelous experience. There's me right there in the middle, isn't it? I am hearing this, and how marvelous that I hear it. And with that comes almost inevitably the thought, I hope I'll hear it more, or how sad that I won't hear it tomorrow. And then there's a different kind of listening, which is not just sensuous, it's not just the sense input. And yet, the senses are alive, active, and working as one, as a whole, not as 5 or 6 different senses, but one whole perception, but without attachment. A complete perception without attachment. No thought, how long will it last? Will I have it again? Alas, it will finish. Then there's fear and all that we've talked about. But when there is this perception without attachment, which is not just sensuous, and I cannot explain it other than, I don't know. Then there is no time, and not possibly any fear of dying, because there's no one there to die. There's no thought. Thought just forms the words to express this, but not what's going to happen to me. It's not a feeling of meanness, and therefore no separation, no isolation, and therefore no fear. See, it always comes around full circle. If you think, give give me a method to get there, then we're sunk. You see that? Sunk in wanting, and that has to be seen. And it can be seen. The whole process of wanting. What it is, how it unfolds, how it creates the me right then and there, and the fear and the ambition and the, we've said it all. I brought a bulletin along. I'm going to read from it. It's the bulletin of the Krishnamurti Foundation. It's the last issue that has come out, and the whole issue is devoted to at least extracts of the life and death of Krishnamurti. You may be aware that he died in February this year. Just reading the very last paragraphs of his very last talk in India. Madras. This last talk was given on January 4th, 86. It wasn't slated as the last talk, but during the last talk, at the end of it, he said this was the last talk. And he says here, how can one explain a meditation that has no measurement, that has no achievement, that doesn't say, I am this, but I will become that? That being God or super angel. Is there a meditation which has nothing to do with will? An energy that says, I must meditate? Is there a meditation which has nothing to do with effort at all? The speaker says there is. You don't have to accept it. He may be talking nonsense, but he sees logically that the ordinary meditation is self-hypnosis, deceiving oneself. And when you stop deceiving, stop all that mechanical process, is there a different kind of meditation? And unfortunately, the speaker says yes. You can't get at it through effort, through giving all your energy to something. It is something that has to be absolutely silent. First of all, begin very humbly, very, very humbly, and therefore very gently, and therefore no pushing, driving, saying, I must do this. It requires a tremendous sense, not only of aloneness, but a sense. I mustn't describe it to you because then you will go off on descriptions. If I describe it, the description is not the real. The description of the moon is not the moon, and the painting of the Himalayas is not the Himalayas. So we'll stop describing. It is for you to play with it or not play with it, going your own way with your own peculiar achievements through meditation. reward, and all the rest of it. So in meditation, which is absolutely no effort, no achievement, no thinking, the brain is quiet. Not made quiet by will, by intention, by conclusion, and all that nonsense. It is quiet. And being quiet, it has infinite space. Are you waiting for me to explore? So is your brain ever quiet? I'm asking you. Your brain is thinking, fearing, thinking of your office work, of your family, what they will do, your sons and daughters, thinking which is time and thought. Is your brain ever quiet? Not made quiet by drugs and by whiskey and various forms of drugging yourself. You drug yourself when you believe. You drug yourself and say, yes, this is perfectly right. The Buddha has said that, therefore it must be right. You're drugging yourself all the time. Therefore you have no energy of that kind that demands the penetration of something immense. So we're now going back to find out what creation is. What is creation? It has nothing to do with invention. What is creation? The origin, the beginning. What is life? Tell me what you think of it. What is life? Not going to the office and all the rest. Not going to the office and all the rest of it. Sex and children, or no children but sex, and so on and so on and so on. What is life? What gives life to that blade of grass in the cement? What is life in us? Not all the things that we go through, power, position, prestige, fame or no fame, but shame. That's not life. That's part of our mishandling of life. But what is life? He says, why are you listening to me? What makes you, if you're listening at all, listen to that man? What is the motive behind your listening? What do you want? What's your desire? Behind the desire, there's a motive. So what is desire? Desire is part of sensation, isn't it? I see this beautiful clock or ugly clock, it's a sensation. The seeing brings about a sensation. From that sensation, thought comes and makes an image of it. That is, I see this clock, rather nice, I would like to have it. The sensation of seeing, then thought coming and making an image of that sensation, and at that moment desire is born. It is very simple. Is there a brain, your brain, which is not muddled up, muddled by environment, by tradition, by society and all the rest of it? What is the origin of life? Are you waiting for me to answer it? This is much too serious a subject for you to play with, because we're going to inquire into something that has no name, no end. I can kill that bird. There's another bird. I can kill all birds. There are too many of them in the world. So we are inquiring into what makes a bird. What is creation behind all this? Are you waiting for me to describe it, go into it? You want me to go into it? Why? From the audience to understand what creation is. Krishnamurti continues, why do you ask that? Because I asked? No description can ever describe the origin. The origin is nameless. The origin is absolutely quiet. It's not worrying about making noise. Creation is something that is most holy. That's the most sacred thing in life. And if you have made a mess of your life, change it. Change it today, not tomorrow. If you're uncertain, find out why and be certain. If your thinking is not straight, think straight, logically. Unless all that is prepared, all that is settled, you can't enter into this world, into the world of creation. It ends. This is the last talk. Do you want to sit together quietly for a while? All right, sirs, sit quietly for a while. May we get up and go now? We will end here for today.